I'm trying to get quorum. I have one colleague who's stuck in committee and another colleague who's on his way. So 5 more minutes, and I apologize, and I thank you for your patience. You can speak, or we can wait the 2 weeks, but it's up to you. But I want to make sure that I acknowledge the fact, and thank you for making the trip out to City Hall. The Honorable Councilman Jose Rizar for joining us today, and my understanding that Councilman Corcoran is on his way. So I'd like to go through the agenda, and want to first recognize that there are some items to be continued, and folks have filled out cards to speak. Item number 1, we do have one card, and that item is going to be continued for 2 weeks. So, Andrew Westall, we're okay? So we'll continue for 2 weeks. And that'll come back, and I'm understanding the Department of Building and Safety wants to look at that issue a little bit closer, but we should be all right. Item number 2,
actually, that one, you're going to have the report back in 2 weeks.
That's what I just said. Okay, they'll be come back in 2 weeks. Okay, item 2, also will be continuing in 2 weeks. But to be clear, and you're right, Guadalupe, on item number 1, we want to request Department of Building and Safety to report back in 2 weeks, and that's my understanding that they'll be providing that report. They need a little bit more time. Item number 2 will continue for 2 weeks. We do have cards on that, and we have Jim McQuiston and Phyllis Doherty. Would you like to speak now, or would you like to wait 2 weeks? You wait 2 weeks? Phyllis Doherty, are you here?
Just in case I can't come back.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Phyllis Doherty, a resident of Los Angeles, also property owner in many areas of Los Angeles. And to allow farmers markets to just set up in residential districts without permits would be devastating to our neighborhoods and also to our local businesses. We need to protect so many people in this, and they need to go through a process. This is not an activity that should take place in a residential area. We are just the victim of such an event, and we are it's finally ended. Thank God we were able to get them out of this parking lot that was donated to them, but we are still fighting the cockroaches, the rats. There's trash dumped all over. There was so much parking. There were people parking in the driveways. You couldn't get out of your own parking space. So on behalf of myself and my tenants who also objected to this and actually were threatening to move, I implore you to follow the advice of the planning department on this and do not approve a buy right for farmers markets in residential zones.
Great. We'll have the full report in 2 weeks, and we'll keep the public comment period open. On 3, we don't have any cards. That one we can approve. The city attorney prepare the ordinance to make various technical changes to achieve consistency with state law and incorporate portions of the 2010 California Mechanical Code. That'll be item 3. Have a second on that, sir? Second. Great. Thank you, sir. On 4, we can move and approval. We have consent. Let's see, no cards. Yes. On 5, we do have a card on 5. That one we're going to continue per the applicant to May 10th and to plan May 25th. Mr. McQuiston, we do have a card for you. You want to be speaking now, or we're going to continue this item? I guess you'd like to speak on this item now.
That's on 6?
On 5. On 5, we're continuing that one.
2?
It'll be continued.
I'll waive,
Okay.
I'll waive 5.
Thank you, sir. 6, we have a few cards on 6, and that also is being continued to May 10th. And on Plum, May 17th. And we have
In plan on the 10th
the
and 17 in council.
That's, okay, the 10th in Plum and the 17th in Council, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 speakers on that one. Let's hold this, and let me go through the agenda, we'll come back and I'll ask if you want to speak or not, and then we'll make a decision. So, we'll hold that one, Roberto?
Okay.
We'll come back to it, and then I'm going to ask if they want to speak. Number 7 is special. We'll call that one up. We have quite a few cards on that one. Number 8 is also special. Quite a few cards on that item. My understanding, Director of Planning is not here today, so we won't have a special report. So going back to 6, the folks that filled out a card on 6, we have Brad Torgan, Doug Haynes, Ziggy Cruz, Jim McQuestion, and Pat Nation. My question to you is, do you like to speak now, or do you want to wait until the item comes before the council to committee on May 10th?
I'm Mr. Torgan, Mr. Haynes, and Mr. Cruz are here. We're happy to wait until May 10th.
Okay. How about the rest of the folks? You like to wait until it comes back? This is item 6. Okay. So my understanding is the rest of the folks on 6 are waiting to wait till it comes back? Is it clear what I'm asking? Okay, so hearing no one, we'll continue this item, and we'll continue the speaker cards for that time as well. Okay, I know we have 7 and 8 left, but I'll jump to number 8, because we do have the fire department captain here on that issue, and I'll leapfrog over 7. 8, because I know he has to be back on San Pedro. It's the fire department. I want to make sure they're able to do their job. So we'll go to item number 8. Roberto?
Yes, council members, item 8 is an appeal by I&I Properties. They're appealing the decision of the West LA APC, which overturned the advisory agency's approval of 6 single-family lots and 1 open space in CD 11.
Okay, can we have the planning department come before us and give us our report?
Committee members, my name is Garland Chang, planning department staff. As was mentioned, the original request was for 14 single-family homes with a gated private street in the R1 zone. There was originally a zoning administrator's adjustment. However, that has been withdrawn. Just to give you a little background, the site is a long, narrow area, approximately 50 feet in width. It's sandwiched between the rear of homes and a flood control channel. The proposed average lot size is 8,000 square feet. The opposition at the first hearing was, there was 20 letters received. There was comments from the council office, neighborhood council. There was a petition with 50 signatures. And the initial decision was approval for 7 lots, 6 single-family homes. It was appealed by the applicant to commission. The appeal was denied. The action of the Deputy Advisory Agency was overturned, and the decision was denied, or the request was denied. The basis for the commission action was the suitability of the site for the proposed density due to location, lack of secondary access, and health-related issues and concerns due to proximity to active pipelines and the potential effects on the water quality on Centinela Creek.
Okay. Any questions for our staff on his report?
I wanted to clarify your findings and a quick, just 2 reasons why you found in this, the way you did in this matter.
I couldn't hear you.
What were your findings? What did you rule in this matter? What was the zoning administrator's determination?
Whose determination?
Yes, just to be clear.
Whose determination are you asking about?
The planning department's determination.
The original one?
The original one.
The original was...
I'm trying to follow the procedure here. I've got two conflicting reports on how
the
what
initial
actually happened.
request was for 14 single-family homes. The first decision was the approval of 7 lots.
7, not the 6, but 7.
6 would be for single-family.
Okay.
1 would be for an open space.
Okay.
That
And
was
the
a- that was
7
a-
were approved.
Yes, total. So that was appealed to commission. Commission denied the appeal, overturned the original decision, and denied the request.
I got it. Okay. I just read 2 reports, and they had conflicting reports on the procedure process. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any questions for the staff? Councilor? Okay. Let's hear from the appellant first. Understand the appellant. Can you come on up? And this is also the applicant, am I correct?
Yes.
Please give us your name and address.
Darrell Fisher, 21520 Yorba Linda Boulevard, Suite G, 563, Yorba Linda, California, 92887.
Can you please state the nature of your appeal?
The nature of appeal is that the APC was basically very arbitrary in making their decision. The advisory agency had made all of the legally required findings, and they actually had difficulty reversing them. Their issues were pipelines,
Clock, please.
which are no longer an issue because they've been abandoned. The issue was secondary access, and we now have secondary access. And the issue of affecting wildlife is just kind of a moot issue. This is a long, narrow parcel, and the homes that we're proposing are about 2,000 square feet. They are from 100 to 140 feet apart as they stretch out along this, the length of this property. After our last meeting, I met with the neighbors, and they seemed interested in looking into possible mitigation measures. Follow-up meetings were held with the council office, but not with each other, us and the neighbors. Based on what they had indicated at the meetings, I have a series of mitigation measures that I think would assist them in terms of dealing with their issues of security and privacy. I wasn't sure if you wanted to take action today or if they still wanted to discuss these in follow-up meetings. We tried to schedule a meeting this last weekend, but they weren't available. Too short of notice to have follow-up meetings. At this point, I don't know what the recommendation of the council office is. The property itself being zoned R1, planned R1, would allow 23 residential lots of 5,000 square foot each. We're only proposing 14. They're about 8,000 square foot lots. And we think it's an appropriate use of the property. When the city council last amended the plan, they made it low density with R1 as the corresponding zone. I'd like to read the mitigation measures. They're brief.
Please continue.
Okay. Revise the house layout slightly to provide for a mini park at the Thornburn entry. That had been expressed as something of interest to the neighborhood.
Say that one more time.
Revise the house layout to provide for a mini park at the entrance. With this provided there, you wouldn't even be able to see the homes from the Thornburn street itself. You'd only be able to see them perhaps from the backyards of the neighbors. revised the house design to have high second floor windows on the side of the homes facing neighbors' rear yards to provide for more privacy. One of their major issues was just having houses back there that could look into their backyards was of concern. We would redesign the houses to create high windows on that side, and therefore there would be no visibility into the yards from the homes themselves. Include a continuous masonry wall along the property line with all of the neighbors for security. Right now those walls are a jumble, and there is occasional security issues with robberies that jump their fences and run away down our property. 4, include a continuous masonry wall along the property line with the creek for security. The flood control channel is there. The flood control people told us that we could use their service road as a secondary access back when we started this plan, and we actually now have put a gate in to provide that secondary access, and that was recommended by or approved by the fire department at the time the track map went through. 5, include a tree screen along the property line with the neighbors in the setback to provide visual privacy and aesthetics. Not only will the houses not be able to look down on them, but we'll put trees along each house so that there'll be an aesthetic screening in effect from those neighbors. And then lastly, we're offering to provide 2 affordable moderate rate units along with the 12 market rate units if the neighborhood desires affordable units in this development. This is as opposed to having to start all over with a new application with an SB 1818 application, which would actually allow 30 units. So our proposal is 12 market rate units and 2 affordable rate units. And our recommendation today is that if the council office, neighborhood council representative, and the local neighborhood can support these or mitigation measures like it without further discussion, it is requested that you grant our appeal and approve the 14-unit subdivision. If the council office, neighborhood council representative, and local neighborhood representatives would prefer to continue the matter so that there could be further discussions of additional mitigation measures, the applicant would request a 60-day continuance and agree to that.
Thank you for that suggestion, and thank you for your presentation. So that has been the appellant, and folks, I'm giving everybody 2 minutes. Given due process, when an appellant is making their case, legally we need to allow them more than the 2 minutes to make their statement, but also within the context of how long the meeting has been going on, so it's not going to give them an hour, but the fact is we need to allow them their statement. That being said, we'll move into a direction where we will now hear from the public comment, and we'd like to hear your opinion. Please give us your name and address. If the person before you has said everything you needed to say, it's okay to say I agree with the previous speaker and give us something different and or new. We would appreciate that, so we don't hear the same thing over and over and over again. I know you hear a lot of passion, some of you have written eloquent letters, so if you're going to read a letter, look at the clock and ask yourself, did I get to my main point? And you need to go to the first page and your main point was the second and you didn't get to it. So I want to make sure that is, I can share that with you to make sure we have an effective committee. I'd like to ask the fire department, Captain Luke Millick, and ask him to come before us. I know there's a concern here. It's a public safety one, and I know you wanted to make sure you made your statement. Good afternoon, sir.
Hello. My name is Luke Millick. I'm the commander of the fire department hydrant and access unit. We receive projects in the early development stages. I oppose the expansion of this project because the secondary access, so-called secondary access, is completely inadequate. It's hardly adequate for emergency access. We require at least a 20-foot wide fire lane with curb and gutter, and for a secondary access road, That needs to come from a different direction entirely. This access road that they're talking about, the LA County Flood Control Road, is in some places only 15 feet wide, hardly paved, no curb and gutter. Our fire department operates by driving into and close by a fire. We would drive into the neighborhood. The second in company would come from a different direction and get water from a different hydrant. This development, the 14-unit development, won't fit in this particular spot. It does not meet minimum fire safety standards. The 6-unit or 7-lot 6-unit development, on the other hand, does meet our standards. That's all I have to say. Are there questions?
Commander Milik, I apologize.
Some people call me commander. I'm actually a captain.
Okay, then I want to make sure I don't inadvertently demote you. But Captain, when you look at this scenario, you're speaking to 6. The applicant is talking 30, 28, 21. What's your reaction to that?
The parcel is a long, narrow, 2,000-foot long, narrow parcel. And sure, I'm quite sure that with the proper architect, you could fit a lot of units in there. I'm not an architect. I don't know about that, but I do know about access, and the access here is minimal.
Okay. Any questions for our captain/commander? No? Okay, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here. Okay, we'll continue with public comment cards. We have with us Denny Schneider, Keith Ballard, and Pat Ballard. Come on up. It's okay to form a line that we can move it quicker. And we got 2 minutes here.
Councilmember Denny Schneider, Westchester Neighbors Association. We've been involved in this for several years already. You have several letters in the file, including the last one from several months ago. We have opposed this project because of several reasons, aside from the fact that we have heard from all of the neighbors who abut to this project. We see the traffic egress at the end for the private road is right near where Thornburn will meet with La Cienega, right near the on-ramp for the freeway. It's already a problem area. Just to put it into perspective, about 3 blocks to the north of this on Thornburn, there's a lot of apartments, and we approved and endorsed a much larger project than this. But this one just doesn't seem to fit from our perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
My name is Keith Ballard. I live at 5333 Thornburn Avenue. I wish to add some data to this study. The 14-house version of this project spans 5 blocks of Thornburn Avenue and impacts 22 private residences and 10 multi-units. It is below grade for most of the distance, or a good part of the distance. It'll require a substantial and relatively high retaining wall on one side of the road. On the other side of the road are 2 active pipelines. We have stood eyeball to eyeball with representatives of the oil companies, and they say they're active. We believe there are significant safety hazards with these 14 houses and should not be built. We are concerned with the close proximity of the homes and Centinela Creek. Just the Exxon Mobil pipeline can do 3.8 million gallons of oil a day. If you have a break due to an earthquake, a construction accident, that will be a disaster in the project and in Centinela Creek, even if it doesn't catch fire. And then finally, I'm appalled at the secondary access. There's nothing for the homeowners. They can't use that gate. It's locked and for the private use of the fire department only. That's not an access. Do you have any questions?
No. It's your turn to speak, sir. Okay. Pat Ballard?
My name is Pat Ballard. I live at 5333 Thornburn Street. I'm the mother of 5 children, and I've lived there on Thornburn Street for 50 years. The proposal to build 14 homes in this 50-foot railway right-of-way should be rejected. As a mother, I am concerned that the children who would live in these homes facing the Centinela drainage channel will be tempted to hop the chain link fence, and they cannot build a solid fence there because of the pipelines. They would be attempting to go into the sewers and into the waterway, and I know that this has happened in the past. The creek channel is deep with sheer sides, either straight down or with steep 45-degree slopes. The bottom is covered with slippery green moss, and in a rainstorm, it is a torrent. As a mother, I'm appalled that the city would consider this a safe place to build family homes. My suggestion would be to let Mr. Klein build the 16 homes, or well, not 50, the 6 homes at the widest part of the property, if the city feels that it is safe to do so. Let the city purchase the remaining undeveloped land back and let it remain a green area for parks in some future date, or a bike path, or a dog park, or a community garden. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Silvio Nunez. Silvio Nunez. Okay, Dan Dalberg, I believe, and Patrick Lyon. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon, members. I just wanted to add to what my neighbor said. There's four pipelines in the rear of that property. It's a former railroad right-of-way for Pacific Electric, 50 feet wide. 2 of the pipelines are active, 16-inch and 12-inch line, ConocoPhillips, ExxonMobil. There's about 125,000 and 95,000 barrels of oil that flow through the back of that property every day. Just in November of last year, the U.S. Department of Transportation issued a 209-page report in the wake of the explosion up in Northern California, and it issues 50 recommendations for local cities to look at with respect to zoning, new standards for development. So basically that has become the standard of care for pipelines. I looked into, with respect to Los Angeles' building and safety, it appears that there's no codes on the book that have to do with proximity of pipelines to buildings and things of that nature. And basically the purpose and intent of putting those pipelines back there in the first place was to keep them away from homes. So I encourage you to the reports, I've sent them all to the council member's office, and I encourage you to just approve the 6 homes at the very end with the open space, and I think we all could live with that. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Tim Delbert? Is Tim here? And Patrick Lyon. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Dolbear. I live in Westchester. I want the record to reflect that this project you're going to see today is not the project that was initially heard in the zoning meeting. This is not the same project that was heard in West LA. This project you're going to see today. I think the city should have some type of standardization, some type of consistency and integrity when the developer presents a plan to the city. How can you hold them accountable when you don't know what position to take when they're constantly changing their plan? This plan has been changed over 3 to 5 times. There must be some type of standardization. We believe in good development. And as you know, you guys are experts. This is not good development. This matter was appealed to the West LA area planning. And let me tell you, if you ever know Ms. Foster, I don't know her personally, she just sat on it. Tell her the Westchester people said thank you. She leveled the playing field. They walked in with a developer, and they walked in with Mr. Fisher, many of you know. They walked in multimillionaire. They walked in with a former commissioner. And Ms. Foster and her commission leveled the playing field that the neighbors in the community had a right to say something and represented our argument. They tried to switch the plan on them, and Ms. Foster caught them. Now look at this. Where is this support coming from this project? Does it come from the homeowners? No. Stakeholders? No. West LA Neighborhood Council? No. ExxonMobil? No. Crimson Oil? No. Los Angeles County Flood Control? No. California Regional Water Control Board? No. Councilman Rosendale's office? No. Los Angeles Fire Department? Let me just say to you, the captain that was here today, is he still here? Well, you salute him. That's the first time in the history that we've been crying out that the captain from downtown agreed with the captains at station number 5. 3 fire captains at station number 5 walked that property and they said, oh no, we can't support this. But you got to understand something, that what we do out here and what we see out here, it doesn't mean that they're going to okay downtown.
Thank you,
and my
sir.
last conclusion, let me just say this one point, if you don't mind, Mr. Reyes.
You need to conclude.
I will conclude right here. I will conclude right here. Thank you. But for Mr. Fisher and all his connections, he was the zoning commissioner 25 years. He said that he knows, he told me personally, he knows how to get around every code and every zone. He was the deputy commissioner for over 25 years here in the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you, sir.
He said he knows how to get around all of it. Yes, he has.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Good afternoon, Honorable Councilman and Committee. My name is Patricia Morrison-Lyon, and I am the Pluck Committee Chair for the Neighborhood Council of Westchester Playa. And today I represent the Neighborhood Council Board position. I've been on the Pluck Committee for the full 10 years since the city charter, and actually have heard this project going back to 2006. So I've become extremely familiar with not only the neighbors, the passion, the emotion, the developer, who is also not only a landowner, but a resident and stakeholder in the community. You've all received a copy of a letter which is the consensus from the board to the Plum Committee, but in summary there are several items on there that remain undone. Some issues have been answered. It's a very narrow property, it's very long, there are a lot of concerns. A lot of us as neighbors are used to having open space, and suddenly building homes and change is not always easy. The Land Use Committee heard this project many, many times. There were changes made. However, consistently there is a concern about the pipelines underneath the property, whether they're active, whether they're dead, whether they have concrete. But I would leave that in the hands of city to determine that as this goes forward in some fashion, because something will be built on this property at some point in time. The major concern that remains is the secondary road. The secondary road was never really designed to be a road for neighbors and fire engines. It is a problem, and the fire inspector did share with you what the issue is, and that does limit the number of homes that could be built on this property. When the neighbors came to us and the community spoke out, they asked us to clearly deny this project and the appeal to this project. The developer has requested an opportunity to attempt to make some concessions to work with the neighbors. Today, inconsistent with our letter from Neighborhood Council, it seems that the neighbors' position is to ask you to go back to West LA Area Planning Commission's decision and accept their recommendation rather than the 14 units that the developer is trying to develop.
And the recommendation was 6.
6 plus 1, an empty lot, yeah, for green space, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
I believe our last speaker is Randy Morris. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. I am actually the architect for the project. I don't know whether that makes a difference or not, but I'd like to make some points because I've been involved in this project for 5 years. My name is Randy Morris, and I'm the architect for the developer. For the last 5 years, we have changed the plans. That was one of the issues, and we have done extensive discussion, have had extensive discussions with ExxonMobil about exactly what pipelines are on the property. What we found after all this time is that all the pipelines on the property are either abandoned or not in use, or irrigation water for the landscaping for the freeway. And the only pipeline that's now in use, according to a letter from ExxonMobil in December of last year, is the 16-inch line, which is 2 feet outside the property underneath the road running along the creek. That information was given to the area planning group in February, and unfortunately, that didn't seem to sway anybody as to the issues involved in the pipeline discussion. In regards to the secondary access, if you look back to the original recommendation by the fire department that was included in the original application, you will find the fire department had no problem at that time allowing this as a secondary access. My exact conversation with the fire chief was that if somebody fell in the creek and you had to get a bunch of emergency guys down there to pull them out, you'd use that road. Why can't the fire department use that road in an emergency-only situation to get out of the end of this, to either access in or get out of this property?
But for the record, is it the same captain or a different captain?
This is a different captain that is here today. Okay, the one here in LA that handles the fire prevention.
Yeah, just for the record, I want to make sure we know who you're talking to.
Oh, thank you very much. This road goes from La Cienega to Centinela. There's two ways in and out. You know, the whole plan has been worked around this particular requirement. And I believe.
Thank you, sir.
That
Can you conclude, please?
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we've heard from the architect, we heard from the appellant, we've heard from the community folks, we heard from the fire department colleagues, and interesting development we have here. We have an applicant that wants 21, asking we'll settle for 14 if I understand, but the APC essentially settled with 6 if I'm accurate. But then we hear there's no support for any units from any of the elected officials in the area, meaning the council office and or authorities who are on that, who oversee that site, given the multi-jurisdictional nature of this area. Mr. Chang, can you come to the microphone, please? Okay. Mr. Chang, what alarms me and what stands out is the presentation by the fire personnel, our Captain Millick. His understanding is that because of the nature of the layout and the number of units being requested, he's against what the applicant desires. In your analysis and looking at his statement, do you have any comment to make in regards to the scenario being proposed as a planner?
Well, looking at it from their position and how they operate.
Who's they?
The fire department.
Okay.
I could see it being very problematic in that there would be ingress, egress by the fire department and the public using it simultaneously in case of emergency. It's
dangerous, in other words.
I think it can be problematic, yes, because what they stated is that secondary access needs to be coming from a different direction, which makes sense in terms of response.
So in an emergency, I'm just trying to fill out the scenario here.
Right. There's people trying to get out. There's people trying to get in.
Fire trucks trying to get in.
Right. In essence, the private street and the embankment become one and the same. And if there's a blockage there, there's no movement.
Okay. Any questions from my colleagues on this issue? Any questions? Okay. I'm seeing none. Well, on the one hand, I want to respect development rights because that's inherent to the process and inherent to every property owner. On the other hand, I'm listening to the stakeholders and how they feel, what they see. And to me, ultimately, is public safety. Now, when you start balancing these two, I know there's some out there that would wish we don't want to see anything built, but that's almost impossible given development rights. we heard from some of the community stakeholders who live in and around the street that they could tolerate 6, that they can work with 6 if they are fitted within the widest areas of this corridor. And we're listening to the fire captain state that they can live with 6 because it provides the kind of space to address an emergency issue. It's not as dense, and so the ability to respond to a crisis and or a tragedy and or a fire, they will be able to amply address in their capacity as fire personnel. So I would recommend, given the weights of what is impacting this site, I would venture colleagues to support the scenario of 6 units, with the understanding that the 7th might be an open space facility. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Is that on the record?
Open space lot.
Okay, colleagues, I would like to put that on the table and ask for a second. If not, there's more discussion. I'm open to hear more discussion. Okay.
Second that and ask a question, Mr. Chair, because I know the developer indicated that he wanted to have further discussions and so on. If we move forward with this recommendation, there wouldn't be anything stopping him from continuing to have discussions about possible modifications of that between now and council, right? So what you're proposing leaves that door open, but it still seems like a reasonable approach that addresses the very serious public safety concerns that our fire department raised.
So, is that a second? That's unanimous? Okay, Roberto, I'm going to read the language in the record.
So your action is to grant the appeal.
Grant the appeal in part?
Right.
Grant in part, deny in part. And since the overturn the entire decision of Deputy Advisory Agency in approving tenant tract map number 61605 for a 14-lot single-family subdivision on a 2.79 net acre site for the property located at 5212 through 5238 Thornburn Street. Is that accurate?
You're actually sustaining the action of the advisory agency. That's my understanding, because the advisory agency approved the 6 lots and the 1 open space.
That's why we paid the big bucks, Roberto. I want to make sure it's accurate.
Just make sure you have the number of units.
Right. It's 6 units and 1 open space, a total of 7 units.
7 units with 1 dedicated for open space.
Right.
Okay. So that's the action of this committee. Thank you very much.
Did you say 7 units or
6? 7 parcels, 6 for housing and 1 for open space.
Right.
Okay? Is that clear? All right. Thank you very much. All right, our next item?
The next item, Councilman, is item 7. It's an appeal by 662 Sepulveda LLC. They're appealing the action of the Planning Department, which disapproved a request for a clarification to a queue condition. The queue condition had been imposed several years ago, and this relates to a request for increase in height. The project is located in CD5, and I believe it's being used as a restaurant currently.
That's correct. Yes. Good morning. Good afternoon, council members. Jim Tokunaga with the City Planning Department. And this case does involve an appeal by the applicant of a director's determination for denying a queue clarification for an additional 5 feet in height for a proposed restaurant and office building. Just for background information, the queue condition was placed in this area back in 1990. The queue conditions apply to both multifamily and commercial properties in this area. It's kind of a T-shaped, sort of a valley area of Moraga Drive and Sepulveda Boulevard, just right next to the San Diego Freeway. There's about 70 parcels involved with the queue condition. The project is to demolish an existing office building and construct a new project with 13,428 square feet. Office building and an existing restaurant that will be expanding. The project involves a 3-story building and a maximum height of 37 feet in height. Again, the queue condition limits the height to 32 feet. The Planning Department in reviewing the application, denied the Q clarification request. We felt that the 37-foot height as proposed was not necessary. We felt that the Q is very clear in setting a height limit at the site back in late 1980s. The councilman for this area wanted to protect sort of this small neighborhood commercial enclave from and the multifamily there from intense development. The existing zoning at that time allowed a 45-foot height limit, and anywhere from 1.5 to 1 to 3 to 1 FAR. By putting the Q conditions here, as well as a delimitation further on, the height is limited to 32 feet and a 1-to-1 FAR. The project as proposed is probably at the maximum FAR that they can have on the site. We felt that if the applicant really wants to do the expansion, we're not opposed to the expansion, but by changing the size of the project, by reducing it just slightly, they can still get the property rights to develop, but meet the height requirement. I felt there was nothing compelling about the site. It's a brand new project. It can certainly be designed to meet the height requirement. Most of the time when we see Q clarifications, it's for project-specific Qs. The Plum Committee often sees zone changes with Q conditions, and sometimes when these projects are built afterwards, the Q conditions are hard to meet because projects change, owners change. In this particular situation, the Q is a neighborhood Q. It's not a project-specific Q condition, and I felt that it did not meet the sort of the guidelines for Q clarification. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, sir. Any questions from our staff, for our staff? Seeing none. Okay, we'll move forward with the public comment period, and my understanding is that the appeal was filed by the project applicant. Can we hear the nature of the appeal from the project applicant? Good day, sir.
Councilman, members, my name is Craig Lawson. I'm a land use consultant, officed at 8758 Venice Boulevard in Los Angeles. And I represent the applicant and the appellant in this matter, Susan Lord and 662 Sepulveda LLC. And just for the record, I want you to be aware that we submitted a letter dated March 30th, which outlines the nature of the appeal and includes some exhibits. I wanted to include just a larger version of one of those exhibits here, if I could hand this out.
Please, provide to the clerk, and the clerk will pass them out. Thank you.
The Bel Air Bar and Grill is a popular neighborhood restaurant which has been at this location for many years. In fact, the site has been used as a restaurant for about 60 years and under the name of Bel Air Bar and Grill for about 10 years. The area is in Bel Air, it's at Sepulveda in Moraga, immediately adjacent to the 405 freeway. It serves the local businesses and residential community. Excuse me. The project includes the remodel and expansion of the existing restaurant and the addition of new office space. What is before you today is the height of the proposed building. The CUP for the restaurant was approved and has not been appealed. And that included a number of conditions. The Q condition limits the height to 32 feet as measured from natural grade and from the midpoint of the lot. The applicant is appealing the denial of that Q condition and is requesting that a 5-foot increase be allowed so that the height could be up to 37 feet in height. This minimal height exception would only apply to about 29% of the project site, a very small portion. We reviewed the legislative history of the Q condition and also the idea that a Q clarification is the appropriate method to make that amendment. May I continue? And we believe that because the Q covers a very limited area, in fact, the area is just this commercial and multifamily area within about 500 feet of the project site, we believe that your action would be appropriate to allow this to be changed through a Q clarification. There's two main reasons why the additional height is needed. One is to allow for the construction of the office space so it has adequate heights within the office units. We don't want to have a 7.5-foot ceiling. We need to have a ceiling which is higher than that. Also, in order to provide the 35 required parking spaces, which is something that would be a great addition to the community. Those are the primary reasons that we're asking for the additional height, and we think that your consideration on that could be, we hope that you will consider that and approve that.
Any questions, my colleagues?
Yeah, what was your first reason that you... Sorry? What was the first reason that you mentioned why you wanted this? You said...
The project includes a restaurant as well as office space. The office space, if we don't get the additional height, then the office space will be limited in terms of ceiling height. The ceiling height would only be about 7 feet 8 inches, which is very low for the office, for the second level of the office.
And the office is 29% of the whole project.
Well, if you see on the picture there, the blue portion is that area that would be exceeding the 32-foot in height, 32-foot height limit. So it's a very small portion of the entire site. The restaurant itself remains, is being remodeled, is not exceeding that height, but it's the office portion that is the higher portion. Okay.
You said 7 feet what? What's the height, 7 feet, if you don't get 37?
7 feet 8 inches. I'm about 6'2", so it would be...
The ceilings would be how high without?
It would be very low ceilings if the height was limited to 32 feet. We've had the architect look at all kinds of different ways to design the building. Reducing the height is just very difficult because in order to provide the 35 parking spaces on what is a very small lot, we need that space, we need the height, we need to get up above 32 feet.
But to get to 8 feet, you need 10 more inches,
We'd like
which
to
is
get,
the average ceiling.
We'd like to get 9 or 10 feet, which is what you normally would see in an office setting. 8 feet is more residential. 9 or 10 feet is more for an office because remember you have lights.
For basketball players? No, just kidding, just kidding.
You have to maintain lights, you have to have air conditioning. It's a different setting than in like a residential home.
Okay. I was just teasing. It's been a long day. All right.
We could get the Harlem Globetrotters in there, maybe.
Okay. Clippers headquarters. Okay. Okay, thank you very much.
Andy from my office was going to talk about community support and some public benefits, if that's okay with you.
As part of the Palin's presentation?
Is that okay?
Okay, we'll give him, what, 3 minutes?
One other question. The streets, the section of the project where you're asking for 37 feet, that abuts the street called Acanto. And this other street, which name I can't see on the map, but it is...
I think it's Sepulveda.
South, right?
South towards Sepulveda.
Is this a street? No, this is a property line for another, it abuts another property. Now, what's on the other side of this Acanto Street? Is it residential? Is it commercial? And what's the...
multifamily residential.
Multifamily residential. How big, how high, what's the height there?
Across the Canto, we have a height study that actually shows some of the heights are 35, some 37. I can show you the picture that has all...
It's 35 and 37 feet in that area?
Yes, and some of those, because they're 2- and 3-story buildings. It's also sloping. Remember, the slope goes up away from Sepulveda, so you're going up in the hills.
So is it safe to say that none of the buildings abutting this property are higher than 37 feet, but those across the street are higher than 37 feet?
Some of them are. This is an exhibit that shows you some of the various heights surrounding it, and there is one that's 37 feet immediately to the south of this. So, can you...
Just by way of background, Councilmember, my understanding is that there's a set of zoning restrictions that the community agreed upon in setting height limitations over a period of time, and that was instituted as an overlay on this area, and that is why they're asking for an exemption of that condition. It is on the slope, and many of the structures were built over time. As a result, it promoted this need for ceiling, and now we have this complication.
And I should say, it was mentioned by the staff, there's 2 ways to change a Q condition. One is a zone change, the other is through a clarification process. Zone change is a major, very long, very detailed process. The clarification is really the appropriate process in this case because it's a small deviation from the limited height, which is at 32, we're asking for 37.
Any other questions, colleagues? Thank you. So you're going to give us the Reader's Digest version, right?
My name is Andy Adame. I'm a land use consultant with Craig Lawson and Company. My office address is the same as Craig Lawson. I also represent the applicant, and basically I'm just going to continue the presentation. The applicant and project team have conducted extensive community support, community outreach. We've gone above and beyond what is normally done. We held a community meeting, which included notifying neighbors within a 500-foot radius. We've held meetings with individuals and with neighbors. We have strong support from the Neighborhood Council, from the Bel Air Association, and from the John Thomas Dye School, which is a nearby elementary school. We've obtained a total of 51 support letters and 76 signatures on a petition which were submitted to the Planning Department. We have, of these supporters, 18 residents live along Acanto Street, which is the street on the backside of the restaurant. These are the people who live closest to the project site. And more recently, we've obtained a total of 47 appeal support letters from people in the community, and those have been filed with the city clerk's office. I do have one more support letter, which I will hand over to Mr. Espinoza momentarily to add to the public record, and that increases our support letters to 48.
Okay.
As part of this community outreach, our client, the applicant, has agreed to many concessions to address the neighbors' concerns regarding traffic, parking, and construction. These concessions are very costly and restrict the project beyond what the Department of City Planning has conditioned. Okay. But by providing these concessions, it illustrates that the applicant and appellant is very willing to meet the neighbors and to address their concerns.
Thank you. Do you want to conclude?
Okay, and then I guess I would just like to add that the most important thing is that this approval of the appeal will allow the provision of the 35 required parking spaces in an area that is impacted by parking congestion, as so many of the existing buildings do not have any parking. So this will take 35 cars off of the streets and greatly improve the situation. We respectfully request that you recommend approval.
Thank you.
Of the appeal.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, we do have Sean Bayless here from Councilman Paul Corrett's office, and I wanted to ask him, we want to speak first. No, are you sure? Because I understand you have some pretty good news. You have a long list of cards. I might want to hear what you have come up with. Okay, fine. You want to wait? We'll wait. I'm fine. Respect your wishes, sir. Okay. Next speaker is Paulette M. Dubé. I hope did I mispronounce that?
You didn't. Good afternoon. Paulette Dubé, Executive Director of the Bel Air Association. The Bel Air Association and our internal land use committee fully supports the Bel Air Bar and Grill redevelopment project. Our support is based on the fact that commercial establishments serving food and beverages in Bel Air are rare, making the Bel Air Bar and Grill a prized neighborhood amenity. The planned renovation upgrades and enhances this gem in a manner consistent with the look and feel of the neighborhood, with world-class architecture, a green design, and high-quality materials. The increased height is necessary for noteworthy architectural design, which a concept needs to be realized. We anticipate that after completion, the Bel Air Bar and Grill will continue to be a focal point for the community, as its appearance will be more in keeping with architecture that characterizes the Sepulveda corridor in Bel Air. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Very succinct. I appreciate that. Patty Lieberman, Mavis Pressler, Cameron Falzoni. Please come on up.
Good afternoon. My name is Cameron Falzone. I'm simply reading a letter on behalf of the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council because the representative couldn't be here today. This is regarding the project at 662 Sepulveda Boulevard. It addresses the ZA. The Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council voted at its October 27th meeting to support the project referenced above. Information was received and testimony was given for the project from both representatives of the project and area stakeholders. The council voted to give its full support for the construction, use, and maintenance of the new three-story commercial building. We respectfully request your support on the project, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact our office. Thank you for your consideration with this matter. Respectfully submitted, Robert A. Ringler, President, Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council.
Great. 80 seconds. Keja Keel. Okay, Ernest Ruffner, coming up, sir. And after Mr. Ruffner, we'll have Martin Palson. Good day, sir.
Good day, sir. My name's Ernest Ruffner. I live on Bellagio Terrace, which is less than a mile from the restaurant. I've listened to a lot today, which is all very favorable to this, but I don't think anybody has pointed out how favorable this would be to the city. The city itself, I think, would benefit from having an enhanced restaurant, from having additional taxes. There are just a great many benefits that I hope the board will consider when it considers this approval.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comment. Martin Palson. Denise Kreskoviak.
Good afternoon. My name is Martin Pelson. I live at 11361 Ovado Place. It's about 100 yards from the restaurant, and until Mark Burnett moved their offices, I also worked about 100 yards from there. I'm just here to support the Bel Air Bar Grill in their project and their appeal for the extra 5 feet, because those 5 feet mean 38 more parking spaces. I live there, I work there. Parking's really tough. If it costs them 5 more feet to build 38 more spaces, I think it's a really good thing. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Denise Kreskoviak. Kreskoviak, okay. Ron Hudson. And then Dwayne Rizzo.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I live at 11372 Ovada Place. Have lived there for over 45 years. Used to go to the restaurant when I was 10 years old. We won't go any further on that. But I am a firm believer that we need to continue with the 5-foot variance. I'm also a board member of the Bel Air Association Board of Directors, also sit on the board of the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council. Susan's been an incredible asset to our community. The neighbors, we all love them because we have a place now where we don't have to drive a great deal. 5 minutes, you can be there. And it's just, we really feel that this will help tremendously, giving her the extra 5 feet that she needs, because we do need the extra parking. It's a real hassle on Acanto right now with the parking. And I am also the representative for the Moraga business area, and a number of the business people and attorney offices feel the same way. This has been a tremendous asset for everyone in the area, for lunches and for dinners. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Dorena Rizzo. We'll move on. Mark A. Martin. Okay. Thank you. Linda Friedman. Mrs. Patricia Bell Hurst. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm going too fast?
You're going into the opposition now.
It's democratic. Let me get to Ms. Friedman, then we'll go to you. Please. Either one.
Go. You.
Thank you.
Yes.
I am a longtime resident and represent the owners of a residential community.
Please give us your name.
I'm sorry, I'm Linda Friedman.
Good day.
I represent a residential community directly across the street from the proposed project. We join in a widespread opposition to the project as proposed. As you know, you've already received extensive opposition, including 40-plus newly submitted letters, in addition to 81 petition signatures and over 50 letters, along with numerous phone calls and emails. Other property owners in the area are concerned that we have no protection for the precedents that this will cause. The increase in height, and I do want to just note that the increase was not 7 foot 8 inches, but has always been represented as 8 foot versus 10 plus ceilings. So at all the other meetings that we attended, including the Bel Air Association, the Beverly Crest, meeting at the appointed site, has always been represented as an issue of ceiling height from 8 foot to 10 foot. As Mr. Togonaga noted earlier, a state-of-the-art office complex can be built successfully with 8-foot ceilings, and you noted that too, Chairman Reyes. In addition to that, there was it was noted that in the senior planner's ruling that none of the immediately adjacent buildings exceed 32 feet in height, and that there is one building at 640, which is on that project, which initiated the original Q condition in 1990, because that is the only one that is over 37 feet. So our buildings and the buildings on Econo directly facing the proposed project are lower than the proposed height, and we appreciate your time and interest. Thank
So
you.
you're saying only one building is taller than 35 feet, and that's the building that created or initiated the Q conditions?
Right. And if anyone were to build on our side or in this immediate area with this zoning area with
Okay.
500 feet, they would have to abide by the code, and we would hope that
Thank you.
that our neighbor would as well. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Freeman. Okay.
Good afternoon. Patricia Bell Hurst, Chairman Emeritus, Federation of Hillside and Canyon. You have their letter, and they are opposed to this project for the proper reasons. Before I go into my 1.5 minutes here, the applicant states that they are having a world-class architect. World-class architects do not build next to alleyways and to active gas stations. You and I all know of world-class architects. Two, they're asking for premier office space. I'd like you to think about the number of 42,000 square feet of available office space, less than 65 feet away from this project. 42,000 square feet. That's a lot of available office space. So for somebody to come in and say they need a 10-foot office ceiling when there's all that space around, you have to wonder what is the real reason for that premier office space. The third issue that it will probably come up is that the neighborhood needs this place. 2 blocks away is the Lux Hotel with valet parking and gourmet dining, and across from them is the Angelino Hotel, also 2 blocks away, with a panoramic view of the city and the ocean. So this is not a criteria that has to meet the needs. It's been there for a long time. It's a watering hole for the neighbors. That's great, but we want them to abide. I'm asking that you deny the appeal. The applicant has not made the findings. I'm asking you to support the city's ZA and your city's city planner, Mr. Tokunaga. We are not trying to kill this project. We're just saying we want you to ask them to abide by the ordinances and the codes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hurst. Michael Raven. Bruce Kaufman. Good day, sir.
Michael Raven. I live at 1026 Moraga Drive. We fully support, the neighborhood residents fully support Mr. Tokunaga's decision to deny the Q condition variance. We're very concerned about the precedent that this would set. We brought this up with Councilman Corrett's office, with Mr. Sean Bayless. Mr. Bayless has agreed with us that this would set a precedent for the neighborhood, and any future construction in that area would be influenced dramatically by this precedent. So that we request that the council abide by the staff decision and deny the appeal.
Thank you, sir. Our next speaker, Bruce Kaufman. Bruce Kaufman, then we'll have Alan Compton. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Bruce Kaufman. I'm a longtime resident on Moraga Drive, and which is adjacent to the property in question. I'm also a licensed professional engineer, so I have some knowledge of the engineering matters. And you've heard the arguments supporting the rejection of the appeal. A key basis for the variance requested by the applicant is that the 37-foot height is required to allow 10-foot ceilings. This is allegedly to increase the market value of the rental office properties. As Mrs. Hurst pointed out, there are plenty of rental properties in the neighborhood. One could question whether you really need 10-foot ceilings. There's some high-value office space adjacent which have 8-foot ceilings. However, the thing that I want to call to your attention is really an engineering matter, and that is that it is possible to have 10-foot ceilings and maintain the 32-foot height. And I would submit to the committee, if I may, some sketching of how to do this. It requires some engineering. It requires some careful architecture. But in fact, if you really want 10-foot ceilings, you can do this.
Interesting.
I oppose the appeal. I ask the Plum Committee to reject the appeal. And I respectfully thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for taking the time. Alan Compton, and then Craig. Well, no, got the appellant.
Alan Compton, 1081 Moraga for 30-some years. I simply want briefly to support Mr. Kaufman. I've seen his drawings, and I agree that they make sense. Also want to comment that much of the strong support, not all, much comes from people who will not be immediately impacted by the changes. They do not live in the immediate neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now, Alan Compton, Ben Resnick, and then Susan Lord.
Good afternoon, Chairman Reyes, members of the committee. My name is Ben Resnick with Jeffrey Mangels, Butler & Mitchell. I, too, am representing Susan Lord and the entity that owns this property. Let me make a few brief comments. The reason I was brought into the matter is there are some legal issues or questions pertaining to proper interpretation. So let me first clear the air a little bit and say, first, people use the word variance. This is not a variance before you. It's a clarification of a Q condition. A Q condition is a condition added by the City Council to a zone change. You have the authority to interpret that. So what is the issue here? Back in the late 80s, when this Q condition was put, it was only put on a handful of properties around Moraga and Sepulveda. The problem with what was done back then is that it says to measure the height as follows: from natural grade at the midpoint of the lot width to the highest point of the building structure. That's the Q condition. The problem is that's not how the city measures height. The city does not measure height this way. And the problem is that natural grade is not a defined term. Midpoint of the lot width is not a defined term. So what we have is an effort, yes, I think, back in the 80s to make sure this doesn't get overdeveloped, and it's not, because the amount of square footage being put in is not a tremendous amount. But that height issue is subject, if I've ever seen one, to a clarification from the council, because the measuring tools provided in that Q condition don't exist. So we've asked for a slight, if you will, adjustment. It's not an adjustment before you. The 5 feet over the 37, as best one could measure the way this is written. And so it is vague. It is very vague and unclear. So it's appropriate. It's not precedent setting in that there are only a handful of properties that are subject to this Q condition. Here's the whole map, the whole ordinance. That's it. So it will not affect the area and the residents. And I'll just close by saying that certainly when this Q condition was imposed back in the late 80s, you know what's going on in the Sepulveda Pass now. The freeway's being widened, sound walls are up, Sepulveda is being widened and rechanneled. This sits right under it, and what
Thank
you're
you,
looking
Mr.
at
Resnick. Thank you,
is
sir.
walls. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Susan Lord.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Susan Lord. I'm the owner of 662 Sepulveda and the Bel Air Bar and Grill, and I'm the one causing all the trouble here today.
So you want the 10-foot ceiling?
Pardon me?
You want the 10-foot ceilings?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do want the 10-foot ceilings, but I'll tell you why. I'm remodeling a very old restaurant. It's a 60-year-old building. It's frankly dilapidated, and if it doesn't get remodeled now, it's going to have to be torn down. I'm tearing down the building next door and building a 37-foot tall building, which adds 35 parking spaces. I'm not building out to my FAR. I can't get any more parking spaces in the restricted area that I have. It's going to be a LEED certified building. I'm putting in a beautiful 2-story art glass entrance that's going to raise the prestige of the entire area. It's a very restricted site. We're building from property line to property line. So we're limited in the amount of office square footage that I can put in to get rent from. And so I need to maximize the beauty and the elegance and the everything about the office space. I'm sorry, I'm not very eloquent. Just that I can get the highest rent I can to try and make some money on this building. It's a business. I'm trying to start a business here. I ask you to approve the 5-foot height variance. It's only on 1/3 of the entire office site, and the zoning allows 45 feet, Ben wants you to know. The multi-family space buildings behind me are elevated above the level of my grade. They also have parking on the first level and the living spaces on the second and third levels. My building will not block the view of the Getty from anybody because the Getty is way off that way. And the only view it's going to block for anybody is of the beautiful 405 freeway. Thank you very much for your time today.
Okay, Ben got it in there somehow. Mr. Tokunaga, before I call up the council representative, I want to ask you, we heard some a legal perspective on the measuring of height, and I wanted to get your perspective just so that we can weigh both sides.
The question was how the height is measured.
Right.
Mr. Resnick was correct in the way that the Q condition defines the height measurement. So that is the way the height is measured. I'm not questioning, regardless of how it's measured now, that's the way that it was measured. I'm not questioning that. Nothing has been submitted to say that the applicants are still going to exceed the height limit even if it was measured by today's standards. So all I'm saying is that the Q clarification for the additional height is not warranted based on the proposed 37-foot height, regardless of how it's measured.
Okay.
And someone says something about a 45-foot height limit. That was the height limit. The Q condition, however, has lowered it down to 32 feet. And there is a project... 32 feet. That is the current height limit.
Okay.
As far as the adjacent buildings, there is a building that's 37-foot height. It's a commercial office building about 65 feet south of the site, but that was built prior to the Q condition. In fact, the hearing examiner's reports back from the 1980s state that that was one of the reasons why they put the Q condition there. Thank you.
Thank you.
An answer, to clarify, where we go about measuring this, it's stated in the
Q condition.
In the Q condition, how we measure. Now, the applicant's representative has said that it's not clear because we don't define those terms. So what do we do in these instances? I mean, we must, do we usually measure it this way? Is this common practice for us?
The current measurement, and I do have it here, is the code requires that you go out 5 feet from the project site to the lowest grade, and then you measure it out.
Okay, that's the current code.
Right.
But this Q condition has a different way of measuring it.
Midpoint.
So it's kind of confusing.
It is confusing, yes.
It is confusing how they did this. Okay.
But it is in the Q condition.
You have a methodology stated.
Yeah.
Okay. Secondly, this is a clarification.
It's
a clarification for me means that, hey, what does this really mean? Tell us what this means. It doesn't necessarily mean in my mind that there'll be some action associated with that. But there is an adjustment here. Is this a regular process that we use to effectuate these types of requests?
Yes, this is the process. The City Planning Commission guidelines allows up to 5 feet in additional height through a Q clarification process.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, colleagues, I do have one more card. Pat Nation, I did call that name, but I guess I went too fast. Good afternoon, ma'am.
Extra minute?
No.
I'm teasing.
But you're good.
My name is Pat Nation. I'm a longtime resident of 905 Moraga Drive. We're all here to support Mr. Tokunaga. We believe he made a just and perfect and reasonable decision on the Q clarification. This area would set a dangerous precedent. The area strangles in traffic. It's going to get worse when they close the Montana off-ramp of the 405 because that's where everyone goes to UCLA, and that whole intersection is going to be jammed up. This area took a big hit with development in the early 80s, pre-general plan rollback. They put up 3 45-foot office buildings, which were then upzoned to C2, now Q, R3, 1VL. And as a result, there's no room to park all the office people. The whole street is just a swarm in diagonal white lining. It's really pretty ugly. If you build this oversized office building, cars will come. At the October 27th Beller Beverly Crest And at the ZA hearing, as Linda Friedman pointed out, they started with the position of 10-foot 6-inch ceilings to 8. Now suddenly they've dropped it to 7 feet 8 inches. I talked to the biggest builder in Orange County. He said that's nonsense. In a 32-foot building, you could build close to 8.5 feet with 2 feet of padding in between for mechanical, plumbing, that sort of thing. No additional building height is required for on-site parking. The 35 spaces that they act like they're giving to us is a requirement to put the building up for building and safety. The developers hearing on November 17th, the ZA said it's not possible to provide 2 levels of underground parking due to the exorbitant cost of additional excavation, particularly during the current economic downturn. Now their excuse is the turn radius won't work to go to a second level of parking. I have the copies of that appeal in their remarks. These self-imposed hardships are easy to remedy by downsizing.
And we're easy to finish.
Okay. Let me misstatements. Why am I going to do that? Oh, I don't know why we're here discussing a proposed combined 13,428 square foot building today, comprising the 3,878 square foot restaurant and the proposed new office building, which is 9,550. The delimitation limits it to an FAR of 1:1, which allows only a 6,504 square foot building. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Bayless. Do you need a drum roll, Mr. Bayless? Do you need a drum roll?
Thank you, gentlemen. Sean Bayless, Councilmember Paul Koretz, Planning and Land Use Deputy, and I'll be brief. We met with the applicant in the neighborhood now on several occasions over the last 5 or 6 months. We've discussed the situation at length.
We need to speak louder or into the microphone.
I apologize. I'm ill, so I don't want to make the next person behind me ill. Anyway, we've talked about this project, the concerns at length, and the neighborhood council has supported this project. So has the Bel Air Homeowners Association. The other organization, the Hillside Federation, has come out against the request. Looking at this project and looking at the request specifically, the queue condition does lend itself to some level of ambiguity. That being said, we've got to take a look at what's appropriate versus what isn't. We understand that the developer would like, the property owner would like higher ceilings. We understand that request. But we also have to be sensitive to the neighborhood's concerns as well, that these height limitations be kept in check. Hearing both sides, the council member feels that it's appropriate to support a 3-foot increase in height from, or a 2-foot decrease from the request, rather, from 37 to 35 feet, and would support that request only if it was in conjunction with additional mitigations that are most aptly during construction. So the Councilman Paul Koretz would like to see a 35-foot height limit with additional mitigations. And I don't know if you have those additional mitigations in front of you, but I can definitely review them.
You have those additional mitigation measures already written?
Yes.
And that's been submitted for the record?
I believe they have, but I can give you one.
Is this what the clerk just handed me? No? Okay. So just to be very, very clear, you don't support 37.
Nope.
You do support 35.
Yes.
With the condition that there is mitigation during construction, additional mitigation during construction.
We have seven specific conditions. One of those conditions being a 3-foot versus 5-foot allowance. So 6 additional conditions.
No. So, and there's 7 conditions you said?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Colleagues, any questions for Mr. Bayless? Please.
Have you mentioned to the applicant that you proposed 35? Because all the testimony I've heard here was a request for 37. So does this cause any design concerns or any other issues like that for the applicant?
The applicant is aware of the councilman's request.
And they're okay with it?
I believe they are, but I would have to let them answer.
I mean, they want 37, but 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 35 will be doable for the design and effectuate the needs of whatever.
Just for the record, we just heard from Ms. Lord that she supports 35.
Okay.
Although she desires 37.
She accepts it.
Accepts it, okay.
Yes.
So I'm not an attorney. Go ahead, Councilman. Okay, anything to add, Councilman Cabrera? Okay, all right. So we have a recommendation from the council. Okay, Roberto, you're up.
It's a grant in part, deny in part, and with the additional mitigation measures.
Okay, City Attorney, we're okay?
What are the additional do you have the, can you read those into the record, or do you have
My
them right?
understanding, there's 7 additional that he had submitted to the record.
I can briefly go over those if you'd like.
You want to go through them on the record?
Yeah, sure. And make
Okay.
it part of the motion.
Thank you, Guadalupe, you were right.
Those additional conditions would be an 8-foot-high decorative windscreen fence during construction on Acanto Street that would provide safety and security for those budding owners. Provide mirrors and flashing lights at the top and bottom of the parking ramp, that to provide safety for the traffic. Post a sign with a 24-hour telephone number on the job site during construction to provide neighbors with a appropriate contact number should there be any concerns. The fifth one is to provide off-site parking for the construction workers and shuttle construction workers to and from the project site during construction. We feel that's a very important one. We are limited in the parking in that area, and the increase during construction, we feel that wouldn't be entirely appropriate. Construction and demolition shall be restricted to the hours of 7 a.m. to 4 p.m. Monday through Friday, and 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. on Saturdays. And 7, lastly, locate the DWP transformer underground in order to allow direct vehicular access from the alleyway over the required loading space and down to the basement parking ramp. We feel that those additional conditions are appropriate.
Okay, so the 7 conditions have been written, and thank you, Guadalupe, for that recommendation too. But we will move forward with that. Have a second? First and a second? Okay.
Yeah, I'll second, Mr. Chair. And if I can, I'd just like to say that I want to compliment, first of all, the council office on this, because these mitigations, I think, are important not just for the neighborhood, but for much of the west side of Los Angeles, because that construction right next to the on-ramp to the 405 could potentially cause some real problems during rush hour, and you've attempted to address that with the mitigations as well. So my compliments to the council's office on that, and also to the applicant and the applicant's representatives for the outreach that you've done to the community in a potentially, as we've seen, quite contentious issue. To have done the outreach that you did, and especially to get the support of the neighborhood council, means a lot to me. So I think that it sounds like you've been able to reach what should be a suitable solution for everyone.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman. So that is the action of this committee. Roberto, anything else out there?
Public comment.
Anybody here for public comment? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.